So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the Northern Ireland deal will be sorted by the Good Friday anniversary, Sunak promises Joe Biden. So you can see a clear shift in the way the UK is going from being very antagonistic towards the EU to being friendlier towards the EU. And we do see this kind of personality change from the UK once in a while, but I think things could be different under Sunak. And I can't wait for someone to clip this up and say I'm an idiot, because it's going to happen, isn't it? Let's be honest. So Sunak has promised Joe Biden that a deal will be reached with the EU over the Northern Ireland Protocol by the time of the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement next year. It is understood the UK Prime Minister has doubts about whether a deal over the protocol, which regulates trade between GB and NI, can be reached by Christmas, but is confident it will be achieved by April. Of course, the protocol itself is part of a deal. What they mean is more like a deal around SPS checks and a few other things, so tweaks to the existing protocol to make it easier for goods from GB to go to NI, even though a veterinary agreement would solve most of the issues. After a meeting between Sunak and Biden on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Bali, Downing Street said they look forward to working together to take forward cooperation between the UK and the US on areas including trade, defence and upholding the Good Friday Agreement. Biden expressed his desire for a negotiated settlement that protects the Good Friday Agreement, which the Prime Minister agreed with, his press secretary said. Downing Street described the first meeting between Biden and Sunak as very friendly and warm. Relations between the two countries have been strained in recent years over the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is true. The issue is that the UK is very good at spinning the idea that we are the sole guardians of the Good Friday Agreement. Biden can easily see through it, but that veneer still exists. Sunak seems to be open to an agreement over the protocol. He had enough sense to push Johnson to avoid a trade war with the EU not long ago, so dude is smarter than Johnson and Truss. Plus, he did not gain power through the ERG, so he's less dependent on them, which makes getting an agreement with the EU easier for him. Pressed on whether the US president raised concerns about the protocol, about the Northern Ireland situation, Sunak's press secretary said yes. You know, for the bad things we can say about Joe Biden, he's been very clear on Northern Ireland, and I have to respect him for that. You have senators and members of the House who have clout, but none of them are on the level of the president. So to have the president backing the cause helps a lot. He can start a trade war on the UK alone if he wants to. Donald Trump, very famously started a trade war against the EU a few years ago. So the US president can do it on their own. They can just set tariffs if they want unilaterally without Congress. Biden, who is of Irish descent and makes it well known to the BBC, has been concerned about the threat to the Northern Ireland peace process posed by the impasse of the protocol. He was one of the politicians who pushed Clinton to intervene way back when. The DUP is boycotting the devolved institution in protest at the protocol, and the party says it will not countenance a return to the Stormont executive, until its economic barriers on trade between Britain and Northern Ireland are removed. This is an issue as the Good Friday Agreement creates Stormont. So if Sunak does get an agreement, but the DUP continue their boycott, then the GFA won't be fully implemented in a sense. At least that's my kind of reading of it, and I could be wrong on that. But there were times Stormont had been closed for a while and the US did not intervene, and blaming Sunak for a DUP boycott would be unfair. I think getting a further agreement with the EU on this, the Northern Ireland Protocol on this, and settling the issue weakens the DUP. Would they blame the Westminster government at that point, for sorting out some of the issues around the protocol and tweaking it, rather than getting rid of it? Are the DUP going to continue their boycott at that point? I don't know. The deadline to establish a new executive lapsed on the 28th of October, at which point the government assumed a legal responsibility to hold a fresh poll within 12 weeks, so by the 19th of January. From what I've read, they're going to extend that election deadline by a good few weeks to avoid more political turmoil, as it would just lead to deadlock again, so they are going to be changing the law around it, and it makes sense to. On Tuesday, the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly said there were still big gaps between the UK and the EU in negotiations over the protocol. He told Westminster's European Scrutiny Committee that there was a better atmosphere between the UK and the EU, but goodwill and trust were not sufficient. I wonder who caused all the ill will. I wonder who that could be. Those ingredients are there, but we shouldn't rush to conclusion that therefore everything is about to come good, because there is still serious work to do, and there are still big gaps, he told the committee. We've heard this before. Remember the Liz Truss charm offensive that happened before she did the heel turn, which is a wrestler thing, an American wrestler thing. She turned full villain, and then she used that to kind of push to become Prime Minister. Also, the fact that the ingredients are there means nothing if the people can't put them together. The ingredients to make a great chicken curry exist within my kitchen, but I have little chance of putting them together because it takes skill to do that, just as it takes skill to get an agreement with the EU and resolve all the issues that remain. But the standard for British politicians has never been lower. Never been lower. This lot are probably the worst lot we've had in a long, long time. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.